And when we get into a nursing home, we're going to be the most docile old people you have ever seen. It's going to be easier to take care of us. I'm just going to have a chair. It has like a bottom on it, and I just push a button, and a hole opens up, and I just shit into a tube. It's going to be great. And I'm just going to sit in front of my computer, and I'm going to bitch about the same MMO that I've been playing for the last 30 years with my friends in Discord. We go to Force Gaming for like a lot of our news on MMOs. And he says, I was wrong about MMOs. Is it the fact that you were wrong that they're going to make a new good MMO? Because like, we're really hoping that you're wrong about that, or not wrong about that. Like, we really want a good new MMO. Throne and livery. Cope.
It's time to admit it. I was wrong about MMOs. How many times over the years in conversations about this genre have you heard the following? It gets good at endgame. Or what about this one? The real game...
Black Desert gets good at it. It gets worse. Hot take. Black Desert just gets worse at endgame. You start off, you're having a great time. Through the mid game, you're having a great time. And then you start building your demos and your fun starts to decline. And then, like, as you experience more PvP, it just starts to decline further.
Starts at endgame. I know I've heard this countless time. For many years, in fact, I've thought and said as much myself. That for the most part, MMOs, the game doesn't really get going until the max level or until endgame. And there is some truth to that for sure. And there's a lot of truth to it. That's why it's said very often. So for example, in most MMOs, it's not until max level that you'll have things like your class's full suite of abilities and spells unlocked, or access to the most difficult content, be that the dungeons, raids, or PvP. And in doing those things, that's where you start acquiring the gear.
Everyone talks about Throne and Liberty. Really, the waiting room that we're all in is Path of Exile 2. Just gonna say it.
That often comes with additional build and playstyle altering effects. And with all of those elements, with all of those things coming together, it is at the end game when you really start to master your class, be that getting better at executing your rotations or increasing your reaction time and expanding your game knowledge in dungeon mechanics or PvP matchups, whatever the case may be. There is a whole extra layer of things that, while they might not be exclusive to end game, they certainly start to come together. Everything starts coming online. And as far
Lost Ark looks really good. I don't really like the fact that Lost Ark is top down. That's what I don't like very much about Lost Ark. Lost Ark's game is beautiful. I think its boss mechanics are incredible. And I think that like the skills feel really fun to use. God, the top down is just so hard.
Are more focused at the end game in MMOs. On top of that, having a good amount of fleshed out end game content, that is vital for any MMO that hopes to have long-term success.
Yeah, like how am I supposed to stare at my character's ass if I'm all the way up here?
Like, it takes developers 5 to 10 years to build the leveling process that in many cases nowadays, the hardest of hardcore players are finishing in under a week's worth of time.
That's us, guys. As he talks about, it's just like, yeah, they explain this leveling process for us. It's done in a week. Introducing seasonal. We're just gonna skip it nowadays. We're just gonna give you level 61.
So yes, you need that repeatable endgame PvE and PvP content
June
to be
will be
solid,
different.
to be really well thought out if you want those players to stick around after that first few weeks and that first month, which for most MMO developers, they do want that because they have recurring income sources via things like subscriptions, battle passes, or season passes and the like. They would like you to keep on playing, so you keep on paying. This keeps the lights on, and ideally it means the game will continue to get supported. So yes, endgame is very important. I'm not denying that, but I also think that in focusing so heavily on the end game, we've also lost sight of the fact that the journey to that point needs to also be good, and that is what I was wrong about. It gets good at end game, doesn't cut it. In fact, I would argue that a major reason many new MMOs have failed over this past 10, 15, or 20 years is because that journey to max level is phoned in. It is paint by numbers of an experience and seems to...
Yeah, so if you don't I don't know about the rest of you guys. I would say that the vast majority of players decide whether or not they like a game within the first hour or two that they play it. And if the game hasn't shown them something that they really like in the first hour or two, yeah, it's cooked. And he's not wrong that a lot of players stop playing an MMO really early because, like, they're not going to put in the 60 hours it takes to get to max level. It's just, it is what it is.
To be made the way that it often is because, I don't know, MMOs have always been designed this way, and that's how it sort of feels. And if we ever hope to rekindle the magic of the MMO genre, and I think we can, and certainly we will one of these days, but first, in order for that to happen, these games need to start putting more thought into the journey to endgame. It shouldn't just be a footnote. It shouldn't just be something that you get through before things get good. The game needs to be good right away, and it needs to be good all along the way. And even more so, I don't think we should be breezing through this process either. What exactly am I talking about? Well,
Hey, I got a picture of the BDO character that they modeled you after. You're an idiot. I did that with First Descent. It's just too much not fun grinding. Yeah, if you don't find like the grind fun in the game, there's nothing to keep you playing the game. You're absolutely right about that. Especially in like Destiny 2 is exactly the same way. Why did we all like Destiny 2 so much? Because the raid was really good. Okay? I didn't do Destiny 2 because the strike experience was desirable. Okay? That shit sucked. All right? It was just a campaign mission with better enemies or different enemies. This time it's Cabal? No way! Like, no one cares, okay? The campaign of Destiny 2 was, for the most part, really solid. I just wish they had released it a little bit better than they did. But, like, you know what? The campaign was great. And the raid was really good, too. But, like, the grind in Destiny, grinding public events, grinding strikes, grinding all that stupid shit. Like, the useless ads on the planets in the lost sectors. All that shit, dude. No one wants to do that stuff. First Descendant is modeled after Destiny, which is why I use it as an example.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a quick quiz here, okay? What MMO am I talking about? So the game starts out after character creation with you loading into a...
This is spoilers. Guys, I'm in OnlyFans when they launch it in November. I cannot wait to fight this guy. I've heard so much about this particular mob right here. This shit's gonna be crazy. What is OnlyFans? It's a guild for content creators led by Soda Poppin', where all of the content creators try to get together and do a raid. It's hardcore WoW, so you can't die. 0 to 60. I don't know anything about World of Warcraft. Like, literally nothing. Okay? I got to level 20 in it by killing the same mob repeatedly for hours because I wanted the Liadrin skin in Hearthstone. That's it. Okay? It's going to be crazy watching me try to get to 60 without dying. And I will do it. I'm going to destroy this game. Okay? I'm literally going to destroy this shit. You know why? Because Black Desert is a much harder game. You can quote me on it. BDO is a much harder game. If I can master BDO's combat, master is such a strong word. If I can play BDO's combat, I can definitely do this. This is going to be fun.
A humble little village. There's a nearby NPC who has a quest marker right above their head with a task for you to go complete in the nearby area. You finish that quest and are then pointed to a camp further beyond where you find a pair of NPCs who also need help. And then before you know it, you've completed a bunch of quests, you've killed some wildlife monsters and bandits, you've leveled up a few times, you've moved through a handful of hubs and explored all the areas in the starting zone. You are then directed to a nearby adjacent zone, which is a bit visually different from the last one, and here you find yet another NPC with another quest. And this whole thing...
Stop demeaning our entire existence as MMO players. Please stop demeaning... Like, what are you doing to me right now? Like, you trying to expose us? Like, we like this. You.
Takes you somewhere in the vicinity of 1 or 2 hours, give or take. You repeat the process in this second zone, and then roughly 1 to 2 hours later, you find yourself arriving in the third zone, and you rinse and repeat this process until you eventually reach max level. Okay. So what MMO am I talking about here? If you guessed retail WoW, you are correct. There's been a lot of discussion recently about how fast leveling is in this most recent expansion, with many players clocking in just shy of 10 hours to go from...
Didn't retail WoW just pre-release an expansion and allowed all of those players to level up to the new level? Right? Like, instantly. In like 8 hours. And then when they released it for like everyone else, all the poor people that couldn't pay for pre-release, they made it like 6 times harder to get all of the... Literally a poor tax.
levels 70 to 80. But the war within aside, leveling hasn't been much difficult or time consuming in retail WoW in a very long time.
Doesn't this combat look better than Black Desert, guys?
Especially when you're starting a fresh character.
How incredible.
Beginning at level 1, you are just blazing through these initial zones, going through several of them in under 5 hours. However, this isn't exactly specific to retail WoW, is it? Because if you thought I was talking about Lost Ark, you were correct. If you thought I was talking about The Elder Scrolls Online, you were correct. If you thought about Neverwinter of Tarisland, if you thought I was talking about the upcoming release of Throne and Liberty, you were correct in all those instances. If you thought I was talking...
But not for Black Desert Online. Wait.
About any of the failed MMOs over this past 10 or 15 years, you were correct.
But he didn't say BDO. We're good. It's us too. Actually, we don't rely on quests as much in BDO.
Correct. And if you were thinking of any...
We actually hate questing. I'll be honest with you. We aren't included in this. We don't quest in BDO. We spam R. We hate it. Every Black Desert player hates questing. We're like the anti-MMO player. None of us want to do quests.
In development MMOs, I am guessing when we eventually play them in the next 5 to 10 years, we will learn you were probably also once again correct. The experience that I outlined here is near identical in so many of these games. But really, the part that I'm talking about isn't the questing hub portion. I don't think there's anything wrong with the design of questing hubs directing you through and around and then into the next zone. That in of itself isn't really a problem. Really, it's all about the speed in which this is happening and what you're doing within that time. In so many modern MMOs, the leveling has been designed as a means to an end. Something...
In my experience, the fun part about leveling in an MMO is less so leveling your character, because that dopamine rush does feel good. I would say it's more about the exploration of the world. Like, I'm more excited to like run around and explore the world and interact with NPCs and like find mobs and stuff. And like, that's what I find engaging about it. The leveling kind of just adds to the world exploration. I think he's kind of missing the point of leveling a little bit here. I think that like leveling, that's the reason MMO players love MMOs so much, is we want to go around and explore the world. It's a big open world and we want to see what's in it. Right, that's what we want to do. The leveling is a small aspect of that sense of exploration that we go for when we try to play MMOs.
To get through as quickly as possible so you can start really playing the game. And that's where I think we've lost our way. We are so focused on getting to the quote good parts of MMOs that we are blazing through what should also be the good parts of the game. Part of this...
I don't give a shit if I level fast or slow. I just want to see if, as I'm exploring the world, am I having a good time? If so, my level is irrelevant. Okay? If I'm not having a good time exploring the world, then the MMO sucks. If I am having a good time exploring the world, then I don't care if I'm level 500. It doesn't matter to me.
This can definitely be attributed to player mentality. Like, there is a desire that people have to rush through to get to max level as quickly as possible. It's absolutely true. I've noticed it in my own play experience for sure, and I often see it talked about as being a big difference in the MMO player base nowadays versus, say, how it was 20 years ago. Now, I want to make it clear, we had min-maxers back then as well, but generally, we all sucked together. Like, even the min-maxers in 2004 were, by today's standards, comparatively total and complete noobs. But player mentality aside, many of these games are now also just designed this way, where the leveling is structured and paced in a manner that it can be blazed through. I mean, currently, if you're starting brand new with a fresh character, you never played the game before, you can reach max level in the Elder Scrolls Online, for example, takes about 50 hours. Guild Wars 2 is like 30.
What you're really describing is how long it took you to get through the main story. And what you're really describing is how long it took you to explore the world. In most cases. Right? You don't really get to max level in a lot of MMOs without walking around to all the different spots where you have to level, right? So like if it took you 50 hours to explore the world, I'd say that's pretty good, right? Like
30 to 35 hours. Retail WoW can take about 25 hours. Lost Ark's like 10 hours. And Throne and Liberty, that's like 6 or 5 hours. Now, keep in mind, these are all very rough estimates. It's highly variable depending on player skill and also your play style. And on top of that, in many cases here, it can be much faster. You can reach max level in a lot of these games in like under 5 hours. And then, of course, on the flip side, it can also take a whole heck of a lot longer. But as a rough guideline for people playing the game what we would consider normally as the developer intended, doing a quest, killing mobs, and going through the zones sort of like at a natural pacing, those rough estimates are generally what you can expect for each of these games. And these estimates are just so much more streamlined and fast-tracked and way faster pacing than what we saw in a lot of MMOs in the past. And
Dude, SWTOR was such a good game when it came out. It was riddled with bugs and shit, but like it was the first time I got to experience like the MMO vibe in a Star Wars game. I was so hyped about that hype carried me through like a month and a half that I played the game before I realized it was complete garbage. Like it was an incredible amount of hype because like it had so much potential.
I would argue that the faster leveling often equates to less time spent in each individual part of the world. You're spending less time in each of the zones as you go through them, and this has created less of a connection to these worlds, and that then results in a less immersive experience. And an MMO that isn't as immersive definitely loses much of the magic that I think makes the genre great. I really do think that this is one of the bigger problems with modern MMOs. There's a lot of factors that go into an MMO being good, but on top of all of those, the fact that we are blazing.
What makes he's focusing on the fact that getting through the leveling process is too fast. When really, I think he needs to be focused on if the leveling process is so fast that you don't actually get to adequately explore the world that you're in, then yes, the leveling process is bad. But I don't really care how fast the leveling process is as long as I have adequately explored the world that my character is in.
Through 90% of the content so fast to get to the remaining 10% of the content as quickly as possible.
This is part of the reason that BDO's endgame is suffering right now, because you've already explored the Ash Forest content. You've already explored it. You explored it like after you left seasonal nowadays. You're like, okay, yeah, I can go grind base Ash Forest. You know what I mean? Like, and then like you grind your balls off, and guess what? You get to explore Ash Forest again. And then once you reach 720 gear score, you're like, okay, what do I want to do now? Ash Forest. Well, what do I do once I reach 760 gear score? You're going to do Ash Forest again. Well, we've already explored Ash Forest. Give us something new, bro.
Which we naturally, inevitably grow tired of, because so much about MMO endgame basically equates to doing the same thing.
Can't you explore at max level? Yes. Yes, you can. Just run around the world and explore, even though there's nothing driving you to do that. But most players are not going to do that. Okay? Most players are not going to explore your game for the sake of exploring your game. Most players need a purpose to go to that location. And when they go to that location, they explore it. Okay, and once that purpose is gone, they're going to move to the next location for which they have a purpose for being there. And they're going to keep doing this. Leveling gives you purpose in exploration rather than just, I'm going to run around and see what's over there, which most players flat out are not going to do for no reason. They will, however, go look in that general direction if a quest has told them they need to go find something over there. And they might find cool stuff.
Things over and over and over again, doing the same dailies, going along the same farming routes, doing the same PvP battlegrounds, and running the same dungeons. So not too long ago, there was a new game revealed called Fellowship. It is called a multiplayer online action game with what they say has endlessly scaling dungeons. The idea here is that the entire thing is basically just MMO inspired end game.
Is this a really good incorporated ad, or is he actually just talking about this?
Dungeon runs as if you were to take World of Warcraft, pull out all the Mythic Plus content, and then just have that be its very own game. So when describing Fellowship, the developer, Chief Rebel, says you can jump into the endgame content straight away, and you don't have to spend hours and hours grinding just to get to the fun stuff. Now, I am going to check out Fellowship. I actually think it looks quite interesting, and it could be a lot of fun on its own. But when thinking about MMO,
what the hell is Fellowship? Okay. It reminds me, people are saying WoW clone. It actually reminds me more of Sea of Thieves art style than anything else.
We're very excited to finally...
That is not me. This is not sponsored. This is not planned. I don't have a nose ring, okay?
get to show Fellowship to the world, a game that we've been working on for a long time. A few years ago, we founded Chief Rebel, an independent studio located in Stockholm, Sweden. We've put together an incredible experienced team that have worked on games like Diablo, the Just Cause series, Battlefield, Helldivers, The Division, World of Warcraft, and a bunch of other huge titles over the years. Here in the studio, we like to call Fellowship a multiplayer online dungeon adventure, a MODA, if you will.
Okay.
Provide new facets and depth to your chosen hero.
Added layers that don't just change the...
She's not very cooldown reliant at all. Instead, she has a very steady build up to constant payoffs that will feel really explosive and flashy. With Warmaster, you're excited to have the players be part of that development journey with us. We've got heaps of content.
Key.
Planned for Fellowship, and there's going to be a lot more to talk about really, really soon. But to start your adventure
Yeah, he looks like Harry Potter, yeah.
with Fellowship, make sure to sign up for our closed alpha starting really soon.
Damn. Damn. I don't know. We'll see.
MMOs in particular,
I don't really think that appeals to me very much, though. It's literally just like WoW if WoW was only co-op dungeons. That's what that kind of looked like.
I realize that I don't agree that the best part of the genre is running its dungeons.
It explains a lot if the devs were Diablo. Yeah, true. That's all Diablo is, too.
Over and over and over again. That is fun for sure. Like, I enjoy that content. The process of stepping into a dungeon for the first time and then going through it, learning its in and outs, run after run, learning every mob and boss encounter until you eventually have every single engagement memorized. That whole arc up to the point of getting a dungeon to farm status, that process can be very enjoyable. It is very enjoyable. I like it, but it's not my favorite part of MMOs, and I don't even think it's the most fun
I hate this guy's hair. It's because you're my viewer.
part either. For me, my favorite part, what I like
train
the most
people to
about
hate
this
people with
genre
that much
is
hair.
the world and everything that happens within it as you play, as you discover, and as you learn the game. So much of that can, and I think should be, while going through the exploring and
The fact that he only has video of a Sork grinding Primal Giants post. Keep in mind, guys, I didn't say Elvia Primal Giants post. I just said normal Primal Giants post. Makes me feel a little sketchy. Also, why does he have Carolyn buff? What's going on with that?
leveling process for the first time. I don't want to be in and out of a zone in under 2 hours like we see in a lot of MMOs nowadays. I want to steep in it. I want to be immersed. And I think that is, like I said, a big part of what's been lost with leveling being streamlined and us being fast-tracked straight into the end game dungeon farming as soon as possible.
Oh God, what game is this? Guild Wars? Or is this Elder Scrolls?
This massive chunk in the middle, and if that chunk's not engaging enough, then you also have the problem of people quitting before they even get to the end game. And to be precise, I'm not even talking about the aspect of leveling itself. There's nothing.
There's never Ashes of Creation? No, that wasn't Ashes of Creation. That's not Ashes. No. Oh no, they're retarded.
Possible. We are losing this massive chunk in the middle, and if that chunk's not engaging enough, then you also have the problem of people quitting before they even get.
It was Ashes years ago. It looks the same as it does today.
Get to the end game. And to be precise, I'm not even talking about the aspect of leveling itself. There's nothing like inherently fun about getting the enough experience to go from levels 10 to 11.
I actually love going from level 10 to 11, or just leveling up. It keeps me playing the game more because I'm staring at that EXP bar watching it go up. It's fun.
The process of slowly unlocking and kind of opening up your character as it gets more abilities, more passive and active spells. That is cool. But the fun part is the things that you're doing in the process while that power progression is also happening. Because I'm really talking about exploring the world, discovering and engaging in things, moving through the zones, completing quests, grinding mobs, exploring the terrain, doing whatever activities the MMO has, and of course, ideally interacting with other players in some capacity along the way. These are the moments that would have created some of my best memories in all my time playing this genre. And I think when games are speeding up that process, they're speeding up the exploration and discovery of the world and the by virtue of the leveling, that we miss out on a lot of potential. So recently, Greg Street, also known as Ghostcrawler, touched on this topic. Previously, having worked on World of Warcraft and the Riot MMO, he is now the studio head of
What Riot MMO?
Fantastic Pixel Castle, who have their own new MMO in development. It's still like probably at least 5 years away, but they're working on a game. Now, last week, Greg posted
5 years. Are they going to release the alpha in 5 years? And then like 3 years after that, alpha 2? How much am I going to have to pay to test the game?
The following thread in which he said, "Someone asked me if it's a mistake to streamline the leveling experience and let players get to endgame ASAP because that's what they love. My answer is yes. I think it's the leveling experience that we all fell in love with and invested in MMOs." He is absolutely on point with that statement.
It's not necessarily the leveling that I cared about, though. It was the fact that when I got to a certain level, then I could go to a new spot and explore new stuff in the world and go get to another level, right? The leveling is certainly a part of it, but it's really the world exploration.
100% agree. And then he went on to say, "I think getting to level cap should be an accomplishment and not a blip. The end game is very, very important, and a lot of MMOs fail because they have a good leveling experience and a lame end game, so we won't forsake that." I'll push back here and say that I don't think a lot of modern MMOs actually do deliver on a good leveling experience. They have a phoned in leveling experience, like I said, and then an end.
He is right about this, that some more modern MMOs have just they're like, oh, the leveling doesn't matter. Everyone just wants to be max level anyway. So they just speed run you to max level. Well, then the problem is your max level and your motivation to go explore all of these different zones in the world is just not there. Why the hell would you go out and explore the world? There's no reason for you to go to these different locations, right? And so the MMO has less value to you now, since you literally speed ran the early levels that quickly.
Game that also doesn't hold up. Obviously, the MMOs that have stuck around over this past 10, 15, 20 years, they have delivered that.
The games are designed so that you explore. The games are designed so that you explore. That is 100% correct. But you don't just run around for no reason in an MMO and just explore every nook and cranny of that MMO. You do that because there's a quest telling you to do that, because you're leveling and you have to go to that monster zone, or because, there's always some reason to go to that part of the world and figure out what you have to do there, or what there is to do there. No one is going to run through your expansion and just run around in an empty world with nothing to do. There needs to be purpose there. A perfect example is Land of the Morning Light. Once Boss Blitz was over, when Land of the Morning Light released, it didn't matter how cool the terrain was. It didn't matter how cool the NPCs were. There was just no reason to be there, and no adventurers went. Now, in contrast, if they had put grind zones in that area and had had a reason for players to continue to come back to the area, that content would continually be explored. Right? BDO feels drastically different from what it did 5 years ago. I came back to it recently. I can hardly get the same experience anymore. I would generally agree with you, but that's a different point.
In some sense, but a lot of the ones that have come and gone, they have failed at both the end game, but also the leveling and immersion. And then he wraps up by saying,
leveling just kind of helps your immersion in the game, right? Giving people a purpose to go to a location also gives them more opportunity to explore that particular area. If there's no purpose to go there, many players just aren't going to go there. But if there's a purpose, then they'll go there, and some players are going to look around and be like, oh, look at this. Look at this cool thing that I found. That's what we like about MMOs.
Also think the leveling
is a tool that helps people engage with the world.
Be challenging and a bit of effort and not something you cruise through so that you can start raiding. Even when I was on WoW, I held this opinion. So taking what Greg said here, much of which I agree with, I think that a lot of MMOs would be best served doing the following. The trend of shortening the leveling process, I think, is the wrong direction. We should be extending the leveling process. And I am not suggesting just creating artificial grinds, but rather having engaging combat right from the get-go and then filling the world with content so that the whole experience is fun from levels.
True. That is absolutely true. Yeah, if you extend the leveling process and you make it so that players have to keep going to new spots to level up, it's a win, right?
One all the way.
This looks like the Throne and Liberty alpha.
Way to max level. Let us spend.
Is that Throne and Liberty now?
Time in these worlds. Let us get immersed. Have us be in these zones long enough so that we actually get to know them, rather than making a character and going from the Shire to the Gates of Mordor in 8 hours. No, thank you. That's way.
He's 100% correct, because see, then you've skipped over the reason that you're playing this massive multiplayer online game. Okay? Which is the giant world that it's in, and then all of the players. Yes, you want to get to play with all the players, but you also want to explore the world too.
Way too accelerated to really get invested in the space, and that's what I want from my MMOs. Because when leveling isn't set to
League of Scripted. First of all, I hate League of Legends as much as you do, so let's just go ahead and lead off with that. Man, MMO players can't be happy about anything these days. All they do is bitch and whine and ask themselves why no one wants to make an MMO. Sorry to rage, I'm just really done with it. I respect it. Please name a player base that doesn't do exactly that. Oh, wait. There's actually, I won't, because there is none, right? League of Legends is a perfect example, okay? Half of playing League of Legends is bitching about League of Legends, okay? If I wasn't in Discord venting to my friend about how mentally ill my top laner was, and the fact that Stevie Wonder can see more shit than this guy can, okay? Because he has no wards. Or the fact that he's pushed up so far. He's pushed so far up that contractions are 3 minutes apart up there, and he keeps getting ganked, and he wants to blame it on me, okay? Complaining about the game is half of the game experience, okay? This is just how it goes, all right? It is what it is, all right? People love League of Legends. People love MMOs, all right? But there's always going to be aspects of the game that you love so much that you're going to complain about. And if you play the game for thousands and thousands of hours, those parts are going to become more and more prevalent over time, so you're going to seem like a whiny bitch. It's the truth. It's the truth. Although lately, I do have to say that on behalf of the MMO community, our developers have been really shitting the bed. Okay, we got New World, who can't even decide whether it's not an MMO. I got Black Desert, who can't read unless it's in Korean. I got World of Warcraft, that literally is poor taxing people on a regular fucking basis. Literally across the genre, you got Lost Ark that has more bots than New World does with its new RPG system. So across the MMO genre, players are kind of upset.
10x speed and you spend several afternoons in one zone rather than just 1 or 2 hours, you can really get to know it.
And in fairness, we're upset for a reason. It's because the developers from 2004 to about 2015 were somehow better than the developers in 2023 or 2020 and onward. Even with all the technology advances, all of the game advances and the engine and the AI advances, we still can't produce a better MMO. It is literally insane.
Doing quests that send you back to prior areas, finding grinding spots, exploring and revisiting sections, discovering new things that you hadn't seen before while you're doing all of this. This whole thing can pull you in and again add a lot of immersion. I will also add here, I think traversal plays a big role. Slowing down the speed at which players can get from one end of the world to another helps also to create immersion. Fast travel can come into the equation, but I think if it does, it should be much later down the road.
MMOs are going to be a thing of the past soon? No, I don't. I think that's the opposite. I think that as time goes on, see, our parents, they didn't play video games. Okay? My parents hate video games. I don't know about you guys. Their parents didn't play video games. We do, though. And MMOs kind of appeal to an older audience. Okay? In general. All right? You don't see a whole lot of young little teenagers playing MMOs very often. It does happen, but it's kind of rare. Right? Generally speaking, you're talking about a much older player base, right? And when we get into a nursing home, we're going to be the most docile old people you have ever seen. It's going to be easier to take care of us. I'm just going to have a chair. It has like a bottom on it, and I just push a button, and a hole opens up, and I just shit into a tube. It's going to be great. And I'm just going to sit in front of my computer and I'm going to bitch about the same MMO that I've been playing for the last 30 years with my friends in Discord. Okay? And that is going to be my definition of being an irate old man. And do you know why I'm going to do that? It's going to be because all my friends are dead. All of my family is dead. And the only people that I know, I'm currently only really able to connect with online because none of us can move out of our rooms. And we're just trying to make our miserable lives a little bit better before we walk into the light. And that's the truth. I think MMOs are going to be just fine over the years. I think they appeal to an older audience.
In fact, the most immersive MMOs that I've ever played have all relied heavily on real-time travel methods. So first, this is you walking with your character, but then introducing things like flight paths, ox carts, blimps, and trains, eventually getting access to your own personal mounts. But the traversal should not be me instantly going from the starter area, instantly fast traveling to the next area. I think at the very least, while games can have this and every game is different, I do think that takes away and pulls you out of the world immersion. And then also leaning into Greg's mention of difficulty as well, I agree that this is a big factor. I don't believe we need to go the route of having every mob in the open world require a full 5-man group with a tank healer and damage dealers. That's a bit much, but making the world so that it's dangerous enough so that players are best served occasionally working together, that is absolutely huge. It helps so
true. That is 100% true. It helps drive people together. You need a reason for players to interact with each other. A lot of World of Warcraft players are very critical of the game over time because they feel like the dungeon finder kind of hurt the game. Like many World of Warcraft players think this because you don't need to be in voice to do the dungeon finder, right? You don't need to like really interact with other players. You're basically just playing effectively with bots. And the funny thing is, bots would sometimes play better than these people. So, like, you need a reason for your players to come together and play. And the reason that the WoW community is upset, or they've been upset for a long time, is that dungeon finder, right? And things like this, they don't really feel like they have a reason to interact with players as much as they did before. They still do at least, but like less so than before it. And in BDO, we feel like we have less like reason to interact with other players because there's no reason to come together to do PvP anymore because that's the only end game we have.
So much this was made super evident last year playing hardcore classic WoW, where just one wrong move would mean your character's demise. But even in regular classic, the difficulty was at such a level that it almost forced a sense of community. And this is how it was back in 2004. This is how it was in the MMOs that I played before WoW, and playing Ashron's Call and playing
We're gonna have a crazy time in hardcore WoW having no knowledge of that game.
Request and many of those pre-WoW MMOs. In many of these games, if you pulled one extra extra mob. If you pulled 2 mobs instead of 1, it probably resulted in a corpse run, which meant you losing time and having to go back to your character. And when everyone in the game has this same shared experience, you see people just naturally working together. Even if it is just quid pro quo, that's fine. It adds that sense of camaraderie and community because we're all going through the same struggle. So slowing down the leveling, sticking to real-time travel speeds, that helps keep us immersed, and then making combat encounters enough of a challenge that the threat of dying is ever present. These things all really help to create a much more immersive experience on the journey to max level, and that immersion helps create many more memories, in my opinion. And yeah, when we get to the max level, as we've discussed, endgame is very important for long-term player retention. You need to have a good loop of activities and things for people to do. That is what's going to keep your most dedicated players active long term, but it just feels like so many MMOs nowadays have made the leveling portion and getting towards endgame just a means to an end, instead of having that also be an actually enjoyable part of the experience. It's more of just something for you to suffer through. So yes, I fully admit
It shouldn't, he's right. Leveling shouldn't feel like you're suffering. It should feel like you're exploring the world and you're having a good time. That's good leveling.
I was wrong about MMOs. The real game doesn't start at endgame. It starts when we first log in, and the best MMOs I've ever played do a good job of making that journey to endgame memorable and immersive, and I am looking forward to whatever new MMO comes along that does this once again as well.
Throne and Liberty Prage. Throne and Liberty Prage.
Because I think there's a lot of elements that go into having a good MMO. You need that good end game. You need the repeatable content. And even though we're repeating that content over and over and over again, we're farming the same dungeons, we're doing the same raids, we're engaging in PvP in the same.
Final Fantasy does that through the story. Exactly. I'm pretty sure in Final Fantasy, correct me if I'm wrong, I've not played it extensively. I got to like level 20 or something. But like you basically just do the main story and you level up through the main story. And the main story introduces you to the entire game, the entire world, all the characters, the leveling process. Hell, even the dungeons and the raids, I'm pretty sure, are all streamlined through the main story. I don't care about leveling up. Leveling up is like additional. You don't care. You're just trying to do the main story. It's kind of like, oh, I leveled up again, right? It just feels good, right? It just adds to the experience of doing the main storyline in Final Fantasy. Right? Leveling up is an important part. He's not wrong. But like it just kind of adds to the overall experience of the MMO. In Final Fantasy's case, it's to the main story.
Areas, we're going along the same resource gathering routes, we're crafting the same items 100 times, even though there's a repetition innate to endgame and MMOs. The MMOs that make that repetition feel fresh in some capacity, mixing things up in some way, those are the ones that have a lot of success, and players tend to stick around with the endgame. But there's so much that goes into it, right? You need to create an interesting world, you need a good combat, you absolutely need good combat. It needs to be snappy, engaging, and have a visceral feel to it. And you can even do that in tab target games, because there are tab target games that do a really good job of tab target and ones that do a really terrible job at it. Upcoming MMO might give you a example of the bad.
Stop. It's going to be good. The combat is going to be good. The combat is going to be, he's not talking about Throne and Liberty. He's not talking about Throne and Liberty. Throne and Liberty combat is amazing.
And although I've heard Throne and Liberty's gotten a little bit better, but anywho, there's a lot that goes.
Oh God.
Into making a good MMO, but I really wanted to just discuss this portion of it, and that's the fact that it seems like so many games in the past 10 years in particular have just made leveling like an afterthought, right? And they haven't created these immersive experiences by design, partially by player impetus, by players' desire to get to max level up as soon as possible.
I have not heard anything about the Throne and Liberty leveling process or the early game. I hope that it's good. I watched Asmon play for like 30 minutes before I had to leave, but Asmon was not wowed with the early game experience though. But I'll admit, when he was playing, I was like, this actually seems pretty good. I don't know. I was like, hey, he was like, oh, I don't like the fact that you can turn into an animal. I just want to ride a mount. That's a fair take, but I actually like the fact that you can turn into an animal. I think that that's cool. Yeah. Asmon hated it at the end. Yeah, well, I mean, like, I don't know. I think that the turning into a mount looks really cool because to me, it has potential in endgame PvP because you can like hawk in and like flank from an angle that you probably could never have done that in a different MMO, right? Like you can send like groups of people to do things that you couldn't do before. I don't know. I don't know if that's even possible in Throne of Liberty, but it looks kind of cool, right? Furry. It does not make you a furry because you turn into another animal. Okay. If you turn into another animal and you want to that animal, it's because you're a furry. Okay. That, like, if at any point you find yourself sexually attracted to the animal that you're turning into, then you have a problem. It's kind of like saying Nidalee is super hot in League of Legends. Oh, you're a furry. No, you're not. You're just a straight guy. Okay. If I say Nidalee's leopard form is super hot in League of Legends, that means I'm a furry. Well, honestly, that's just kind of bestiality. Let's just call it what it is. Anyway, that's the video there. Go take a look at it. Interact with it. He gives great MMO news. Forrest is great.